This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
Now, here's the deal, Mark. We are seeing more headlines with warnings about significant stock market pullbacks. Ray Dalio is the CEO of the hedge fund Bridgewater, which manages about $90 billion. He quoted an ancient Chinese proverb that says, "A smart rabbit has three holes," basically meaning when trouble strikes, you need to have options. So do you create your retirement plans with an exit ramp out of the market, or how would you describe that?
There's a lot of wisdom in what he said there. Absolutely, people have to have options, and we design portfolios to withstand those market downturns. But one of the key beliefs that we have is that some money should actually be out of the market. I call it a two-pocket strategy, because if we have some money out of the market, it always gives us a place to turn when the market is down, because we absolutely do not want to be reaching into those market-based accounts when the market is down. It creates what we call a death spiral, an artificially premature depletion of those accounts. And so we create at least two pockets, one out of the market, one in, and that gives people the ability to respond to whatever life brings to us. We all know there's a lot of curveballs. Very few of our lives have gone the way we expected, and I absolutely expect difficult times in the future. Now, I'm not stupid enough to try to forecast when those hard times are going to come, but it's just absolutely part of the market that what goes up also comes down, difficult times in the future. And when we're looking at 10, 20, 30 years in retirement, we really have to build portfolios that can last. We don't build them for the short term. We build them for the long term. And so people need to think accordingly and come meet with us if that's not something that they're familiar with. If they think that all of their money has to be in the market in order to beat inflation, well, then that's a little short-sighted, and they can learn some more and would say, come visit with us. Let us teach you, show you alternatives that are safer, because at the end of the day, retirement is far more about risk management than anything else. So come in for a risk review. Risk management is really the key.
You're exactly right there. I would agree with you. And if you'd like to come in for this risk review, again, discussing your participation both in and out of the market, what are some different tools and strategies that you can utilize to both protect and build your retirement? These are things that you need to be talking about. And 9 times out of 10, you sit down with folks and they go, "Oh my gosh, Mark, I am so conservative. I mean, you would never believe it." And then you run this risk review and turns out not so much. I mean, they are hands down right close to the fire where they could lose anything at any moment. So it's important to know where you stand there and also those different opportunities. Again, for this risk review, give a call today. That's 702-996-4050, 702-996-4050. And again, that website, lots of great resources there, mygoldenyearsroadmap.com. This is an interesting question here. How much can you spend each month when you begin retirement so that you don't run out of money? Because we also know the number one fear in retirement is running out of money. So an important question here. Christine Benz at Morningstar says they took everything into account and came up with this percentage pool for 2026.
We came out with 3.9% as a safe starting withdrawal for people who have an approximately 30-year time horizon. But my hope is that people don't just take that 3.9 or 4% and run with it, because in many scenarios that will lead to significant underspending and really depriving themselves of a better quality of life that they could otherwise have.
Okay, so she seems to kind of say that, flexible spending strategies might work better than a percentage number for withdrawals here. Can you explain exactly what she's talking about? And, of course, what's something that you use during this process?
Well, I'll be candid. I mean, her comments make me a little nervous because they're very close to what's been taught for the last 33 years. Back in 1992, William Bengen put an article out into the financial journals in which he described what he called a 4% rule, that basically said that people who have money in the market can take roughly 4% out of their portfolio every year and never run out of money. And that scares me, as it does many academics who have done studies on this. The academics have been pretty clear that if you have all your money in the market, you probably shouldn't take more than 2.5% to 3% out. So if you have $1 million portfolio, rather than taking $40,000 out, you should probably take $25,000 to $30,000 out. If you had a $500,000 portfolio, rather than take $20,000 out, you should take less out. So I just have a hard time with a one-size-fits-all rule. I think we have to look at everyone's situation, everyone's health, how long do they expect to live, for example, what are their obligations, what are their desires, And so what we often end up doing is creating what we call tiered spending plans. Now, tiered spending plans basically acknowledge that during the early years of retirement, many people are spending more than they would in later years, and that's simply because they have the good health and the energy to want to go out and, kind of go and experience, celebrate this time off and travel and do the things that their health allows. Once they've checked that bucket list, it's kind of a slow-go period where they're not as eager to get out of the house, and eventually there's that no-go period that people assume is going to be less expensive, but the reality is at the end of life, that's when a lot of the health care-related expenses arise. And so some people call it kind of a smiley face because you've got this big spending at the front of retirement and big spending at the end and a bit of a dip in between. And so we create tiered spending plans that are built around people's expectations. But most importantly, it's not a one-time set it and forget it. It's something that we have to revise each year, and people need to have a flexible mindset. The thing I'm not crazy about with her kind of one-size-fits-all rule is that not only can you end up running out of money more quickly, but some people end up just trying to gauge their spending based upon last year's market behavior. And that puts them in kind of a yo-yo style of living, where they're increasing their spending in one year, decreasing the next, and they're constantly adjusting. And I find that most people like a little more certainty. And so we create income out of contractually guaranteed accounts that are not in the market, and then we leave money in the market that over time can outpace inflation. And so these are ideas that we love to share with people and would invite people to come visit with us if they want to have more confidence and peace of mind about their spending patterns. But we can absolutely model various scenarios for people to help them see their probability of success. Because if it's a guessing game for you, then you're not ready to retire. You need to have more confidence before you jump off into the retirement zone. So come visit with us.
I would agree. And I like that you talk about, folks wanting certainty, right? I mean, we always talk about that, having that income, not the if-come, right? You want to know your plan is certain. You don't want to be guessing and wondering how things are going to be put together. You want to be certain that your plan is going to work for you and exactly how you want it to work for you. So if these are things you have questions about, if this is something that you've been wondering about, thinking about, and it's been keeping you up at night, again, this is something that is so important. Also remember that there is no cookie-cutter approach here. When you sit down with Mark and the team, everybody's situation is different. So every approach, every tool, every strategy is going to be customized specifically for you. That phone number, 702-996-4050. 702-996-4050. The website, mygoldenyearsroadmap.com. Something that's hard to navigate lately are these headlines. We're recently seeing and hearing about a new leadership at the Federal Reserve, the group that, of course, sets interest rates that could affect all of us. President Trump wants to replace Chair Jay Powell with Kevin Warsh. So what kind of mindset does he bring? Well, here's what he recently told Fox Business.
They've made a series of mistakes, not just in the last year, but the last 5 or 6 years. And I think their track record is really quite poor in forecasting the growth of the economy from policies like the ones the president put in place. And their inflation forecasts have been terrible, too. That's why they were so late, and that's why we had this surge of inflation that's done the most harm to the hardest working Americans among us. I think until there's regime change at the Fed, until there's new people running the Fed, a new operating framework, they're stuck with their old mistakes.
Interesting. Well, the Fed headlines can move markets overnight. I mean, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, retirement income has to last decades. That's the honest truth here. We're living longer. We need our money to last longer. So how do you build a plan that isn't dependent on who is sitting in the Fed chair?
We really create plans that are over 20 and 30-year horizons because that's what we anticipate for longevity. And so we're not really looking at the short-term responses of the Fed, even though they do have an impact on the portfolio. We structure portfolios to last for the long term, and we adjust accordingly as life happens differently than expected. So the key message I would take with people is don't think short term. The government's going to do what it does, and we're going to have to ride out whatever happens. But the portfolio itself should be designed so that we don't have to think in terms of weeks or months. We're thinking in terms of years and decades. And that's how we do things. And then we meet on a regular basis to adjust based upon what's happened in our individual lives as well as what's happened in the world economy. I would say don't lose sleep over the things we can't control.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, exactly of who's in the Fed chair, who's in the White House. These are all things that I think a lot of people are wondering about. Well, do I make my decision based on this or that? And we talked about that over the past few weeks, Mark, how as long as your plan is sturdy and built on a stern foundation and it's working for you, not against you, and again, it's customized for you, and it's also built to withstand whatever happens in the market, the economy, the Fed. I mean, I think this is something that a lot of folks get a little intimidated about. Maybe they think, well, if I put a plan together under President Trump, am I going to have to kind of reframe things based on who's next in the White House? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think too many people approach retirement and financial planning generally as some type of crapshoot, like some type of gambling exercises. And too many people are looking for the quick lead, the quick returns in the market. And quite bluntly, that's not what retirement planning is. That may be financial planning for some people who are simply trying to amass the greatest wealth possible and who are young and they don't care about risk. But the people that we work with typically are people between the age of 55 and 75 who are thinking more about preservation, and they're thinking more about income than they are about the creation of more and more assets. What they're looking for is certainty, and so it's an entirely different mindset, an entirely different game plan, because the rules are different, particularly when it comes to the government and these retirement plans where people have accumulated most of their wealth. And so it's a different game. Retirement planning is not about gambling. We leave that thinking behind as we transition into what we call the distribution phase. And I often compare it to climbing a mountain. There's one set of rules to get up to the top of the mountain, and what got you there is not what's going to get you safely down, because we all know that the fatalities are really on the downside of the mountain. It's an entirely different game and skill set there, and that's where we specialize. So there is a transition mentally, and we say, come visit with us, because that's where we specialize. We can help you make that transition successfully.
And when you talk about making that transition, a lot of people don't realize, you said it a little bit earlier, that transitioning to retirement is a little bit more, I don't know, emotional, complex a little bit than people realize, because there is so much preparation and so many decisions that have to be made, and it can be daunting and stressful, but that's where Mark comes in. So if you're kind of in uncharted waters right now going, I don't even know where to begin, how do I start? I'm so confused, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Listen, don't put your head in the sand, because that's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to help you now, much less 10 years from now. This is where you come in for a retirement roadmap with Mark, and you sit down one-on-one. I mean, after all, the show is literally called A Roadmap to Navigate Retirement. Mark's going to give you the roadmap, and he's going to help you navigate these crazy, choppy waters, these windy roads of retirement. Don't be afraid of it. If anything, dive right towards it. Again, if you'd like to come in for that retirement roadmap, that phone number, 702-996-4050, 702-996-4050. That website, of course, mygoldenyearsroadmap.com. The White House has floated an idea of requiring that companies be required to release their earnings reports once every 6 months instead of once a quarter. Critics say that companies could use it to delay or maybe even hide bad news. In other words, reporting 4 times a year is better. And you meet with your clients, I mean, at least once a year. I'm sure folks come in more often than that, too. So when do you see that there's a need for more of these meetings, more conversations?
Boy, that's a loaded question. It's a great question. It really depends upon the family and the circumstances, because we don't often have both partners on the same page, and that's a big deal to me. I really stress the importance of having both spouses in the meeting so that they're on the same page, because if we're coming at it with different expectations, there's going to invariably be disappointment as a result of unmet expectations. So if we're not all on the same page, we're going to have some problems and frustrations. And again, this is also a new language. We have our own kind of jargon in the financial industry, and I fear that I, like many advisors, sometimes slip into that without realizing it. And so I think repetition is incredibly important, because it takes the repetition of the same ideas for that light bulb to go on for everyone. And once it happens for people, I find it takes 12 to 18 months often for people to really get the science behind the art of what we're doing, because there is both science and art to it. But it takes a little bit of time for people to fully grasp what it is that we're doing for them. And once it happens, it is so wonderfully cathartic, because they have this release, and it's like, now I can go enjoy my life and not have to worry about these financial issues, which is exactly the point we want to get them to sooner than later. but it does require regular meetings, and particularly during the early years of the relationship. So we absolutely insist on meeting at least once a year in person. We like to do mid-year meetings, and those sometimes are via Zoom, and then we'll meet more frequently as the client's circumstances require. We're always available for our clients, and we're seeing them regularly as well at these various classes and social events that we're doing, because the classes are done on a monthly basis, social events on at least quarterly basis. So we're seeing our clients a lot because we think it's incredibly important that we're hearing them and that they're hearing us, that we're really communicating. But it's most important that I'm hearing them and what they're going through, and if there's difficulties, just pick up the phone. Let's talk.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.